Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street, the small business lenders to help it grow. Lance, good to see you. Katie, good to see you. Special guest John Dale of PayNet. John's been with PayNet for, I can say that. We'd love having Bill Phelan on. John, you guys have great data, small business industry, and I want you to go through it because you have a lot of free stuff the lenders can access. And you've been bought by Equifax. So real quick, John, what do you do and what is your business model?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me. And Bill Phelan sends his regards, and we're sorry he couldn't make it. So I lead our customer success group at Equifax Commercial. And so I've got a couple of teams. Part of my team's focus on developing value for our customers before the sale and, really quantify exactly how they can benefit from our products in the various suites. And then I've got another side of my team that focuses on post-account or post-transaction management to really retain and grow and make sure that they get the most out of our services.
Yeah, and you guys do a great job on data. And what are all your data points? I mean, you have a tremendous amount of data.
We've got over 30 million unique businesses in our database, over $3.5 trillion of actual credit obligations that we're tracking. This goes all the way back to early 2000s, sometimes earlier. So it really gives us the unique data asset for that. That's just the credit side. And we also have a pretty unique marketing database as well. Which I'm happy to get into if anybody would like to talk to me after the show.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about your data. Like I said, I'm a stats guy. I love data. So let's go to some questions. This is small business lending, according to PayNet, is down year over year. True or false?
I think I know what the answer is, Bob.
Well, it's true. The question is, John, what percentage?
What percentage is down?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Down year over year.
This is not, I didn't mean to embarrass you. I know delinquencies, I'm looking at this, delinquencies actually are flat at 1.5%. Small business lending, what they do is they break it out by category.
I can say overall, our lending indices, indicate year-over-year decline of about 3%, January over January prior year in the aggregate.
And NAIC code accommodation food service, they're down 32%, arts entertainment, 29%. I always love this one, mining and quarrying and oil. Well, I understand oil and gas. 20%. Educational services, which I'm a little surprised at, is down 19%. And real estate, I assume that's real estate management, John? Is that what that is?
That's really, it's all real estate, but we're seeing the most pointed contraction in commercial real estate, especially for retail locations and office space.
Well, we talked about the negatives. What's the positive? Which industry do you think has the greatest growth? Hint, it's not arts, entertainment, and recreation.
Come on, Bob.
And another hint, it's not accommodation and food services. Number one is agriculture at 11%. Construction's right behind it at 9%. I think that's fine. And public administration. What's a good definition of public administration, John?
That is really, we define it as government entities or government agencies, and often it's a municipality, and so they may issue bonds or seek other financing for public works type projects.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy, Lance, is that construction's up, but we're all concerned about however people aren't paying rent and there's a bubble coming.
Well, that by itself would indicate there might be a glut of commercial space at some point.
Yeah, very good. And Katie's question is PPP real quick with some more stuff comes in every day. And we talked about the changes for SBA and which one of these changes is retroactive. it's allowing borrowers of student debt to be able to get a loan, non-financial fraud felonies, and Schedule C filers. Which one of those is retroactive, Katie?
Yeah, it looks like we have a pretty smart audience on today. It is the student debt and delinquency and defaults. That's the only one that the SBA indicated that is retroactive.
And when we say retroactive to what date, Katie?
From what I understand, that's going to be anybody who already applied for a loan.
First round and got kicked out.
I think the answer, yeah, I think the answer on
For
that
that
one.
one, I believe it's yes.
Oh, it is yes.
Oh, for the rest of them, though, since they are not retroactive, then that's going to be a no for those.
That's the retroactive. John, you gave us some nice slides. What do you got here for us?
Well, I've got a lot. Thanks for asking, Bob. So we, these, most of what I'm showing you is available for free, and it's updated monthly on our Equifax commercial website. And we track primarily 3 indices, which are measures of small business lending health. So one of them is lending activity. We've also got delinquencies, both short-term and longer-term delinquencies, and also defaults. And we've been tracking this really looking back 15, 16 years. So the first chart that we've got here is our lending activity index, small business lending index. And, as we'll look at kind of the broader picture first. Everybody recognizes back in 08, 09, that sharp dip. And that, of course, was the Great Recession. But since then, we've seen a pretty consistent increase, with a slight pause in 2016 and 17, but resuming in 18 and 19 of increased lending activity until we get to 2020. Obviously, COVID hits, and you can see there that's really around April. You see this sharp drop, and that's about a 20% drop in lending activity last summer. But you see that it was pretty brief, though, also. It really bounced back within a couple of months. And so, even though we're a little lower than prior year activity, we've seen a pretty quick recovery as well.
John,
sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've always said the difference between this crisis and the one in was access to capital. Back in 08, 09, you couldn't get capital. Everything was frozen. Here, we do have access to capital. Back 10 years ago, we had banks closing every Friday. Here, we haven't had a bank closure in a long time. And so this is a great chart to show that, hey, there is capital available for small business. 2 quick questions on this chart. What is your definition of small business, and what is your definition of the lending index?
Sure. Our definition of a small business is based on our database. We've got over 500 lenders and credit providers reporting to us. And if an individual business has $1 million or less of combined credit obligations that is reported to us, then we consider it a small business. And as to your question of what exactly is this index, it is measuring new loan issuance month by month. And we use 2005 as our baseline, our 100. So if we're looking at mid-2019 and you see that it crossed over 150, that means that we had 50% more new loans issued in that period versus where we were in 2005.
John, does the chart include trade credit?
It does not include trade credit. Great question. This is actual loan or lease information.
Transactions. Okay, very good. And we've talked about the next chart pretty much. Yeah, we did all those. What have we got on delinquencies, John? This is a major concern to us. One of the problems with SBA's data is it doesn't disclose delinquencies. We can get charge-off data, but what are you seeing out there in the marketplace?
We're seeing lower delinquencies than you might expect. I think there are a couple of reasons here. And on the last chart, you were comparing it to the 08, 09 recession, which we do a lot of as well. And you look at it here and you can see, okay, definitely have two spikes. That much is evident. But you see, in last year, it was a pretty narrow spike. I mean, we're talking 3 months from going to pre-pandemic to, albeit a little elevated, to pretty flat, and a much decreased level than the spike. Whereas looking at 08, 09, we're looking at a 3-year or more period to return to those levels. Some of the reasons for that sharp decrease that took so much longer back in 08, 09, I think there was a modest recovery. Everything that had immediately closed in March and April, you saw at least some kind of opening. Although it was slow, there was a little move in the right direction. You've mentioned the P3 loan disbursements, and that was just a huge stimulus, we think, and that helped a lot of small businesses. And in addition to that, on the same note, a lot of these lenders, everybody understood the difficulty that their portfolio was seeing. And we're hearing 10 to 20% lender portfolios typically might have some kind of accommodation and payment deferment. So if a payment is deferred, then it shows as current pay. And so we're not seeing it on this chart.
Do you have a sense of what percentage of, in other words, the decrease from the decrease of the spike, would you attribute that all to PPP related activities, or what do you attribute it to?
I would say PPP and also lender, really, accommodating and active portfolio management. By this point in the cycle, the lenders had a game plan, and they knew that their entire portfolio was seeing stress. And so in the first 30 days, they're just scrambling and couldn't really keep up with the volume of requests and couldn't document it in their systems when they could make a decision. By this point in the cycle, though, they've had a little more time to think. They've got a strategy for addressing and thought about, okay, this is where we can have a 60-day payment deferral, and this is a 90-day, and in these situations, maybe we'll think about 180 days. And so I think they had a much more organized approach, and there wasn't a danger of a borrower coming to the lender and having to take 45 days to negotiate something, and therefore show up as delinquent during that time period, because they really had their plan together.
Lance, would you say the differences between today and the Great Recession, did aid lenders learn anything from that? Did government, Main Street?
Well,
tell me what your take is on this.
Well, I think the federal government response to this problem was a more significant response to help take away those potential delinquencies. Last time they threw a lot of money to large corporations. They threw a lot of money to the automakers. They threw money to big businesses. This time the response was, let's get money out to the small companies throughout America that employ people. And, I think that was a big key in this not being a pretty catastrophic economic event, is the federal government's response to it. Now, I also think that, we're looking at a relatively good delinquency rate. I do think that eventually we'll see a slight spike in that, because at some point, just as an example, the 11-12 payments have kept so many SBA borrowers in business. So at some point those end. And when those end, we'll find out which businesses are truly doing well.
John, on your top header here, what's the 31 to 90 stand for? Is that days delinquent? Is that?
That is days, and the percentage is not actually percentage. It is days past due, and this is what we call our moderate delinquency. And shortly we'll look at our more severe 91 to 180 days past due.
Great. Tell us about the next chart.
Sure. This is the different components that all go into that index, and it's sorted by these earlier and thinking about, who's subject to and very sensitive to travel and crowd restrictions. And so, not a huge surprise here. You look at the bottom in green, agriculture, they've got fairly steady demand. They're the lowest, and they've traditionally been the lowest delinquency rate among these sectors. And at the other end, retail still pretty high. They've been hit pretty hard, and you'll see in the more severe delinquency that this is a sector that it really hasn't hit bottom yet, because we're seeing the more severe delinquencies continue to grow, which is different than the other sectors.
Right.
But the good signs here, you do see a decrease in many of these other sectors, and transportation, construction, agriculture, they're actually a little lower than they were pre-pandemic. So, it's getting better. Some sectors are just going to obviously take a lot longer to recover.
I guess my question is for Lance and John. I'm seeing we're hitting 6% delinquencies on 2010. Have we got that under control? Are we going to go that high? You mentioned a little spike. How high is high?
Lance, would you like to go first?
Well, I mean, we have to, in using common sense and managing small business loan portfolios, realizing that most of our SBA borrowers have gotten anywhere from 6, some are going to get more payments, but basically for the last year, SBA borrowers have gotten their payments paid for them except for 2 or 3 months. That has helped keep businesses open. PPP has helped keep businesses open, but the PPP funds don't last forever either. So, as we come out of the covered period for PPP, and as we come out of the CARES Act payments, both of those things are going to end pretty close to the same time, Bob. And I think we will see a little spike. I don't think it's going to get to the 2009 levels.
Let's hope not.
That you're seeing, but we will see an uptick in delinquencies when the federal, and who knows, they may come out with yet another act, another law, another round of PPP, but I don't think so.
Well, in the COVID bill, Katie, I mean, there is money allocated for small business lending, so we don't know there's a lot of grant money that's going to help as well. This is an interesting chart. This is going up. Is this going to stop going up in terms of, these are 91 to 180 days, I assume?
That's right, 91 to 180 here. And the one difference, you see the same relative peaks looking back to 08, 09, definitely a noticeable spike, but it's still less than half where it was back in the Great Recession. But if you look at it, you don't see that sharp drop that we saw back with the moderate delinquency. You see a very small drop, and then with the fall COVID surge, things really kept going here. And that kind of tells us that it's a long recovery for a lot of these small businesses. And to your point before of how much of a delinquency spike might we see, I agree with Lance. I don't think it's going to be like the Great Recession, but I do think we're going to see a rise. And I've seen various estimates for herd immunity. When do we achieve it? And I think the earliest I've seen it is May, and then the latest is more like October to November. And so it's really, is the current round of P3 stimulus enough to help these businesses, that are in this category and just still hanging on, and hopefully that answer is yes, but we're definitely seeing a lot more that just haven't gotten better yet.
Right. And then the second part of that question, John, is what cultural changes are going to be permanent in terms of how we interact as a society? John, great stuff. Real quick, I apologize for going over. I like to stop and start on time, but this one, we got too much good information. Katie, real quick, I'm going to pass on the next two slides. It's a nice recap. Katie, tell us real quick on what SBA released yesterday, and more importantly, what's going on with Schedule C, because that's important to all of us.
Yeah, so I'll go through this real fast. The SBA did give us the slides from yesterday's presentation. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch the full presentation, but there are some key things that you need to know. Primarily the retroactivity that we were already discussing. Schedule C, unfortunately, the new application process and the new calculation is not going to be retroactive. They are going to be accepting those Schedule C applications, the new ones that came out the day before yesterday, starting today. And here's the calculation. Of course, I believe we have this all in our handouts, so you can go ahead and download that and go through the actual calculation if you don't know it. Really, it's just a change in which line they can use. They can now use, I believe, line 7 or line 31. But if you are using the new formula, you're going to use the new forms. If you're using the old formula, you can continue using the older forms.
Katie, on step 3, if it's the NAICS code 72, we get to multiply by 3.5 still. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, but I think an important takeaway from this, Bob, is to look Schedule C filers unless they're NAICS code 72. The max loan amount's $28.33. We've been getting some questions at the answer desk about issues like this, but there is a max loan amount.
Wait, I'm sorry. So the max loan amount
On a Schedule C filer.
Okay.
With no, I'm sorry, Bob, a Schedule C filer with no employees.
No employees. Okay, well, but at least we have a number. Hey, John, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy. Be sure and tell Bill I said hello. We do have all this stuff attached. Katie, have a nice weekend. Lance, have a nice weekend. The answer desk is open. Lance has been very busy on that. Real quick, Joseph, put up the passwords up on that. Somewhere on there it is. The username is PPP Space Lender. The password is PPP Lender. The website is pppanswerdesk.com. Thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.